The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Bri. Bri's going to tell us all about her life. She's going to let us know where and when she was born. She's going to describe what it was like where she grew up, the school she went to, and the education that she received. So, Bri, you're in the room.
Yes.
Or Bri.
Yes.
It's my English.
That's just as well. Thank you for having me, Tim. I'm really excited to be here, excited to jump into it, and it's a pleasure to be here.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure's all mine. So let's have a look. When and where did you arrive on the scene? Mind you, don't have to say when because you're a lady. We don't like asking ladies their age.
I'm okay at this point in my life, I'm okay sharing. I arrived on the scene March 24th, 1991. So I am 31 at this point in time, and I'm from the US, in the smallest state in the US, which is Rhode Island. So, yeah.
Now, before you go any further, is it a real thing, the Rhode Island Red?
Yeah, it sure is. The Rhode Island Red Hen. You know more than a lot of people would be able to say about Rhode Island. So I love that. Yes, the Rhode Island Red is a real thing. The Red Hen is the state bird, and that describes the state as well.
Wow. So we're off to a good start then.
Yeah.
So what was it like where you grew up?
Oh, man. So I was born and raised in the same town in Rhode Island. So a small town in northern Rhode Island called Smithfield. I say small, it's actually about 20,000 people. So it could be mid-sized for many other towns comparatively. But it was one of the places where, even though there is 20,000 people, it felt like everyone knew everyone, not only just in the town, but the state itself is so small that it takes just an hour to cross it from top to bottom, which is the long way. So, and ironically, a lot of people, though I am not one of them, a lot of people love Rhode Island and the culture of Rhode Island so much that they will start there and they'll stay there. So there's also this really family-oriented place. It's very family-oriented. You could have family in several towns in the state as well, which is what it felt like. That was my experience. I had so much family sort of spread throughout the state. And, that type of community was wonderful to be able to grow up in. So, I loved the schools that I went to in the town. I loved just the community that I had, the support that was shown. It was just really through and through a wonderful place to grow up, a wonderful place, I'm sure, for my parents. Loved raising a family there. So it was a quaint place to be.
So what were the houses like? Were they like, do you have sort of wide avenues with sort of detached houses all down long drives, or were you sort of semi-detached or in terrace houses? What were the houses like?
So, that's such a unique question. So, there were a lot of, the way New England is in New England in the States, it's, there's a lot of raised ranches. There's some colonials, there's a lot of farmhouses. And then you kind of have this sort of blend coming in of all of that type of house sort of being redone in a really grandiose way. So, but the raised ranch, like when I think about the houses that I would see most, the raised ranch or, the 2-level, I don't even know the exact name of the house, but many of the houses were similar in size and similar in structure, but everyone sort of added character to it based on how they did their landscaping and, the colors of the houses, if there were awnings, things like that. So lots of similarities, but also there are lots of character there.
Mm. So I guess New England in the fall springs to mind, and I guess you've got the colours that go on in the autumn
Yeah.
to die for.
Oh, let me tell you, that is one of the biggest parts of growing up in New England and in Rhode Island that I miss the most. Because at this point, I'm in New York City, so I'm no longer amongst a ton of trees, though I do have Central Park and other parks, but it's more of a concrete jungle, as people refer to it too. So, but the fall or autumn in New England, in Rhode Island, is absolutely spectacular. One of the most beautiful places, the most incredible foliage at that time of year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess at that time of the year as well is the start of football season. So are you a patriot?
You know, I might get in trouble. I'm lucky that I'm alone right now in my space because I do cohabitate with a New Yorker, so I could get in big trouble. But yeah, I mean the Boston sports are really the heart of New England. So we've got the Patriots, the Celtics, the Red Sox, the Bruins. That quad right there of
Yeah.
sports teams are what I grew up on. Actually, I in the town that I lived in there, it was once a college. Now it's a university. It's called Bryant University. But when it was Bryant College, it was actually the Patriots practice field. So for the first like 10 or 12 years of my life, the Patriots football team was actually practicing in my town. So it was pretty cool because you could actually go and watch and as they practice. So unique little piece that I actually don't talk about much at this point in my life. And sometimes I even
Wow.
forget myself, but really cool. Those earlier years, they were practicing in the town.
So let's look at the early years.
Yeah.
Um, Going from sort of kindergarten to the first couple of grades. What
Mhm.
was your school like?
I love that these are the questions that you bring up because I think it's so it's really having me remember what it was like back then because it's not something I reflect on often. Um, Kindergarten, first and second grade, or like the first few grades. I just remember my teachers were all about sort of us being able to explore our creativity. I remember that a lot. It was a big focal point of the education that I got was students really being able to explore their creativity, kind of really given that opportunity to find out sort of those foundational pieces of who we are. So I remember lots of arts and crafts. All of my teachers in elementary school were female. So I didn't have male teachers until I got to the middle school age, which for me was 6th to 8th grade. So I had all
Mm.
female teachers, all very nurturing and just so warm-hearted. Another piece that I really, really remember about elementary school. So, and kindergarten was only at that point half day. I don't know
Mm.
if that's the same or different for a lot of people, or even the same in my hometown still. But kindergarten was a half day, and I remember my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so we didn't go to preschool. She did everything with us, so she really sort of gave us that foundational
Mm.
piece all the way up until I was 5 and able to go to kindergarten. But really nurturing, really creative, really fun, a lot of play and exploratory parts of education at that point.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
So moving up then,
Yeah.
what what was your favourite subject?
Oh, such a great question. So in the younger years, I really, I really liked sort of this exploration. So I really think about like science and how I was fascinated by, you know, learning sort of about the world around me. Because at that point, science was learning about the natural world, and you're learning about animals and plants and life cycles and those types of things. So at that time, science was really intriguing for me. But then as I sort of progressed into the later grades, I really found how much I loved language arts. And I think it was partly because as the science and math expanded, it definitely got more technical and more difficult. And I found that I learned a lot better with words than with numbers and equations. So that was just maybe by nature, I sort of made that transition into the language arts space. And I found that writing could be really powerful. And it was something that I was good at. At that time, I started to really discover my ability to be able to write and use expression in that way. So then again, at this point in my life, I'm back into social sciences, which I guess is a combination of both. So being in psychology at this point. So really, you know, it kind of fluctuated, but earlier years science, later years language arts.
Oh, fantastic. So moving on into sort of middle school.
Yeah.
When we look at your middle school, were you into reading? I mean, you say you're into writing, but what about the reading?
You know, I'm going to be as transparent as possible here and say reading did not actually pique my interest to read leisurely. And this is going to sound, maybe it'll sound crazy, but until grad school, actually, I didn't become like a voracious reader and an active reader and a leisure reader until I got to grad school. And I think it's because I finally found what I love to read about, which is psychology. And I know that we will eventually get there. But in the middle school years and even in high school, I read because I had to. I read because it was assigned. I never had a problem with it. It was always something that came pretty naturally. I was able to keep up with reading, but it was not a passion for me until much, much later. And I've spoke with others who have had similar experiences where, you know, what they were being assigned in grade school just wasn't what they wanted to be reading. And then when you start to really explore what your interests are and what you want to do in a career and in life, that's when the books and your mindset really start to open up to the power and the wonder of reading.
Yeah. So, middle school, were you sporty? Did you enjoy your sports? I mean, I was surrounded by four teams of different sports, and
Yes.
you got the Patriots on your doorstep every sort of fall. So, what
You
about you? Did you get into sport?
Yes. So sports were a big part of my upbringing. So speaking sports, the most traditional that people will consider a sport was tennis. I was a tennis player my whole life since I could walk and talk. I was 3 or 4 the first time I picked up a tennis racket, and it was life-changing for me. Tennis really taught me so many skills about myself, about being on a team, because tennis is really cool where you get to do both. It's both an individual sport and a team sport. So tennis was for sure carried me through from elementary school, middle school, through high school. But I was also a dancer. And at the same time that I started playing tennis, I started dance as well. And so dancing by nature of movement is a sport in its own regard. But the competitions were more, they weren't weekly or bi-weekly. They were more preparing for competitions in the country and in other states and things like that. But I was very, very active, especially in middle school and high school. So in middle school as well, it was exploratory for me. So I tried a few other sports. I tried track and field. I did the hurdles for a little bit. I tried some of the throwing and the distance running. I really got to try it all, and I was excited to try it all in middle school. So very active all the way through. Even now, still, though not in the same way, I've maintained that level of activity.
So let's have a look at your dancing. What sort of dance was it? Was it like ballet, classics? Was it contemporary? Was it theatrical?
So with dance, the dance school that I went to, it was foundational in tap, jazz, and ballet. So I was classically trained in ballet. I also got to put on tap shoes weekly, which was amazing because that was like music and dance all together. So you got to sort of listen to the beat and become the beat, which was really cool about tap. Jazz, we both did exploratory, where we learned, where jazz came from, and we got to learn different jazz techniques, like Fosse, for example. I was learning different Fosse dances, if any dancers listening might know. But that all sort of transitioned. So my dance school was really good at exposing us to all sorts of dance. So I got to try contemporary, I got to try modern, I got to try Irish step dancing. So all of those other things, we started to incorporate modern a lot more into dancing. As I got older, it was a little bit more mature for what we were learning, kind of moving your body in a way that is not so structured. So that was really cool to incorporate. I also did point for about 10 years in that time. So once I sort of had my foundational training in ballet, I got to graduate to point shoes, which was pretty amazing. It's pretty incredible that our bodies can move on these small blocks of wood. So that was amazing, and I loved incorporating that. And then also a real passion for me, which was really jazz was foundational, but then I discovered hip hop. And hip hop was fun because, again, it was this new way to move my body to music that feels more current for me. So I think it was that fusion of, especially, again, a lot of this happened in the middle school time where we got more exploratory. So as I was listening to new music and learning new sounds, that was really where hip hop took off for me, because it incorporated these cool pop songs and up and coming songs that I was listening to. And I realized that I could learn how to dance to them.
And did you do any ballroom dancing?
I did. It was another exploratory piece. So I got to learn lots of components of ballroom dancing. We also got to do, so we would do ballroom classes where we would, partner up with each other. And we also really got to learn different cultural dances too. So I'm thinking a lot of Latin American dances and such. So lots of different exposure. Ballroom dancing is so technical. But what's really cool about it is once you get beyond the technique, then you fall into that rhythm and you sort of really feel it as it happens. So, dance exposes you to so much about who you are and how your body can move and how you can express yourself. So ballroom was an amazing experience for me.
So the ballroom classes then, did you have boys or did you have to do girls taking the boys' part?
At that time, my studio was all girls. So what we would do is we would switch off, and it gave us the opportunity to learn both parts. And again, that was really growing up in that studio. They were all about that exposure and that learning. So it wasn't a big deal that we had to take on both the male role and the female role, because we thought it was just so cool to be able to learn it and expand our dance horizon.
Now, does that have a negative effect when you go and have a ballroom dance at a wedding or something like that, and you get a young man that you're dancing with, and you end up leading him all the time? Does that happen?
Well, this hasn't happened to me before. So I have not been to any, though I've been to several weddings. None of them have really incorporated that formal guidance, or the ones that might have incorporated it, it was an option. So
Mm.
I haven't run into that at all, but I can imagine that it could be a problem because I do like to take the lead when I'm dancing, and I think it's just a matter of me really going full force into my own expressive state. So I'll have to make sure I
You have
work.
to have a strong partner that knows what he's doing to lead you then.
That's it.
Fantastic. Now, did you do, because you were into the arts, did you do any theatre?
You know, I never fully immersed myself in theater. I did a couple of plays. I wouldn't even be able to remember the name because it's like middle school sort of small skit plays.
Mm.
And I did it just again exploring place in my life where I wanted to try different things. And for a while, I actually remember asking my parents to go into acting. I'm like, I think it would be really cool, and I really wanted to go into acting, but um, I felt like the acting that I saw on TV was something that I was interested in, but the theater that was taking place in my school and in my community wasn't as interesting to me. Um,
Mm.
Reflecting on it, I don't know if it was. I really don't know what the reason was there, but I remember thinking it'd be really cool to be an actor, but I didn't really go into theater or practice those skills in acting. So you know, I guess there's a small disconnect there.
So you didn't chase the musical theatre to be in the chorus line then with your
No,
dance?
it's funny. I just had this conversation with a few friends this past weekend. We were talking about in our schools, a lot of the school systems, you had to at some point either do band or chorus. And in elementary school, we all had 1 year where we tried an instrument. And at that time in fifth grade, I had tried the flute. And I realized that the flute wasn't for me. And though I know instruments, I know that each instrument can be different. I was like, let me step away from instruments and let me go into chorus. And I loved chorus. I actually really enjoyed singing. I wasn't a 5-star, incredible singer, but there were in high school, I actually did. I make the joke that it was because no one else would do it, but I did sing the national anthem in high school for our 4 different basketball games and football games and things. But I think it was just by nature of I was also a cheerleader, which pairs with the dancing, and I think it was just the fact that I was there and I was in chorus, so I could sing by singing standards. But it was never a career move for me.
So that's not the reason that you move into New York then, to chase that theatrical.
It wasn't
No.
it.
So moving on then slightly into your high school days.
Okay.
So what what was your most fun subject that you did?
Oh man. So high school, I feel like educationally really put me in a new space. I loved my high school experience. I loved just everything about my high school. It was fairly small. There were 200 kids per graduating class. So at this point, there were the 4 elementary schools that went to 1 middle school and 1 high school. So between our 4 elementary schools, we had about 200 kids, 250 maybe, that we graduated with. And when I reflect on high school, it feels like everything was fun. But there's a couple of subjects that I loved, and one of them was my law class. So, and a lot of people think like, oh, law is not, not fun to learn about. But for us, we had one of the coolest teachers who just made law interesting and fun. And the way he did that was by not just reading about law or studying law, but we were practicing law in the classroom daily. So we were acting as lawyers and acting as different attorneys in parts of the legal system. We were acting as judges. We got to act as the clients on both sides. We got to do mock trials. So rather than us learning law by reading the books on law, which sounds really, really difficult for a high schooler, especially, we just got to learn it by doing. And it made it so fun. It made it, again, so exploratory. That was really a theme of my education, was exploratory. And it really put us in the place to understand, like, is this something that I would want to or could see myself pursuing post high school? Might I want to be a litigation attorney, or might I want to be a defense attorney? And we got to ask those questions because we actually got to do it in the classroom. And for me, especially, and I say this, this was a personal experience, but my law teacher was also my tennis coach. So I had a really special and unique relationship with him. I was also the captain of his team. He was and still remains a mentor of mine in my life. So that class for me just really was truly a fun and exciting class.
So obviously you had to do some sort of research into the part that you were going to do, whether you're going to be a defense lawyer or whether you're going to be a judge. You had to do some research into what the case was about, I guess. So and then you do the research and then you put it all together in playing out the scene. Is that how it worked?
That was it. Yeah.
So
And we all got to play. We all basically got to play every part. So, and our teacher would do was, we both, for one of our major assignments, we had the opportunity to write out a case. So, and then we also used cases that were happening in the media at that time, and we played them out ourselves. So unsolved cases, we basically adopted them into the classroom and we debated, or we had someone playing the part of the person on the defense stand, and someone playing the part of those that are on the prosecution side. So we really got to fully immerse ourselves.
wow. So that sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
It was.
Make law sound interesting.
And it really did propel a lot of law students out of our high school. There are several people that I know that either graduated in my class or classes before or after me that went on to become lawyers, judges, and other people operating in a courtroom. So it was really powerful.
Wow. So obviously you managed to graduate.
Yes.
Did you graduate with honours or did you just scrape through?
So I graduated with the highest honors. School was really important to me. It's always been really important to me. And on top of the fact that I think most important to me was that it was really meaningful for my parents, and not just high school, but beyond, which I know we will transition to. But I feel like so much of my education and how much I pushed myself to really be able to be at the top of the class wherever I was partly because it was how I was raised, in learning those skills were just a part of who I became and learning really how to do education, so to speak. But also it was, I pushed myself so hard because I knew how important it was for my family and for my parents. And so they've always been sort of that fuel behind me to do my best and sort of push myself to the places that I know I can go and the places that I know I can reach. So um, always high honors at at the top of the class, one of them. So through high school, college, and beyond.
So Bri's a proper little swot then, is she? Got your card marked.
Except for when I have to learn a foreign language. That and that is something that I have not yet spoke about. But if we talked about the most difficult courses for me, Spanish was so tough. I've tried to learn many different languages, and just tapping into that part of my brain is difficult and frustrating, and was for sure the lowest grades I received in school. So there were learning experiences for
So you
sure.
either have an aptitude for languages or you don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I'm kind of fortunate that when I growing up around Europe, I can speak a little bit of lots of languages, and I have always made that a priority. If I'm going to a country, learn a tiny little bit of the language and say please, thank you, and order a beer, and which way is the station, something like that. So
Right.
and I'll tell you a little story. I was driving a truck for a Norwegian company, so I spoke a little bit of Norwegian, but it was a line truck that went from Oslo to Paris. And just outside Paris, there's a place called Le Mans. You might have heard it. They have a bit of a race there over 24 hours.
Okay.
Just outside this Le Mans is this factory that we used to go to pick up some stuff. And as I walked into the factory, a charge hand would come out, and I see him coming across the yard, and I'll shout across the yard, "Bonjour, monsieur, ça va? Avez-vous chargé pour moi pour Norvège, s'il vous plaît?" And he's come out, he's put his hands over his ears, he's put his hands up, he's, "Please, please, please, don't speak French." So he always spoke to me in English. I wonder why.
Wow.
Yeah, you speak French pretty badly, and they'll come back to you in English.
Yeah.
And I find that with quite a lot of languages. So,
Yeah,
but there
it's
you
a
go. That's
great
a
skill.
funny little story.
It's funny. It's a good skill to have. You know, ironically, what I found was, though, and this is something for the future of when I do have kids, I want them to be able to at least learn one other language when they're young, because that's when they can learn language. That's sort of the science behind it, is it's so much easier that as they're learning one language to learn others as well. So that is a hope for my future children. But what I also found out for myself was moving into undergrad in college, I had to take a language as well. And I thought about my 4 years, actually, it was 6 years of Spanish, because we started in middle school. So I had 2 years in middle school and 4 years in high school, and I was still not even close to proficient. So I was like, oh man, I don't think me going back into that same language is going to be beneficial. And I'm scrolling down trying to see what language I'm going to choose. And like, maybe just starting a new language, starting at the elementary level is where I need to start. And then I saw sign language, and I actually took 4 semesters of sign language in college, and I absolutely loved it. Because I found that I was a hands-on learner. And we've talked about exploratory learning in a lot of this, for me at least. And I realized that expressing with my hands, and even with the movement of dance, I just found that using my body, I learn a lot better. So realizing that sign language was an option for me in college, rather than taking another language that I knew was going to be tough for me to conceptually work through, it was such a wonderful experience. I loved it. I still like to brush up on my sign language. So that's sort of my aside that I learned, though I'm not great at learning languages through speech. Sign language is something that it like brought all of my other skills together.
So you just have to go and volunteer at a deaf club for once a week just to
That's
keep that skill set up.
That's it.
Ripper. Lovely. So let's look at your colleges.
Yeah.
How you graduated with honours from high school, moved on to college. Where did you go?
So when I went to undergrad, I went to Northeastern University. It was in Boston. And at the time, I was still really unsure what I wanted to do. I knew I had a lot of options. I knew that my high school experience and success set me up for a lot of different avenues that I could take, but I really had no idea. And a lot of people had actually told me, based on my personality, sort of this outgoing nature, and here we are, me being behind a mic, a lot of people said you should go into broadcasting. And at the time, I was like, okay, I feel like I could do that. And I sort of listened to others because I didn't really know myself. So I was a communications major in undergrad, and I learned a lot, but I found that studying communications and even studying broadcasting wasn't the exact fit for me at the time. I knew there was a piece of me who wanted to be able to speak, who wanted to be behind a microphone, who wanted to sort of have that larger voice in some type of space of influence, but it didn't feel like a quite right fit. So I did stick in my communications degree. I feel like it's opened so many doors from there, but I also started taking classes in education. And that was where, at the time, I started to really feel that comfort and that move to want to continue to pursue. But aside from not really knowing and just going into communications by default, I also chose Northeastern University as my place to go, based off of the aesthetics in the city. And I just loved it. I remember going to visit it, and it was an hour away from home. So Boston from Rhode Island was just an hour, which was enough of a step outside of my comfort zone to gain that independence, but also close enough to be able to return back to my comfort zone and, be close enough to family at the time. So
I kind of get that. So you nip back at the weekend with all your washing, you get a decent meal from mum, and
yeah,
yeah, I get it.
yeah, that was that.
So you're living on campus during the week and then sort of scarpering home at the weekend with your washing and
Yeah. Yeah. I found that I went back less and less as I got more and more comfortable in the city of Boston, and got my friend group and such. So it was a security blanket for a time. And then it was really helpful as time went by. I transitioned and loved being in the city. I found that I loved being in cities in general. And that was really my first exposure of living in a city, coming from the small town that I did.
so you got through your undergrad then
Yeah.
in communications and sign language.
Well, I had to do sign language as part of the communications degree, but
All right.
luckily I didn't have to major or minor in language. I just had to take it as part of the coursework.
Uh-huh. So what else did you study there then?
Yeah. So
Did you carry on with your dance?
I'm sorry?
Did you carry on with your dance?
I did. I actually carried on dancing through undergrad, and I was on the dance team. We danced at a lot of the different events, sporting events, school events. Eventually went on to be the captain of the dance team. So I really stayed true to those roots and loved it. That was being a part of a team in your college experience is really, for me, it was really, really important. Being a part of, I think, just any group, sort of finding your group in your college experience is important. But for me, that team was one of those groups that I really found a home base in, which was nice. But after I graduated, so I graduated there in 2014. And then, as I said, I kind of started going down the education path a little bit, and I wasn't really sure. So I had this communications degree, still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do after I graduated. So I started working in this middle school that I had done an internship in. And so I started working there and really started to navigate the space in education that I like to work in. And that's when I found that I really like the social emotional part of working with students and working with humans. I like to sort of work on mental health and in those spaces. So at this point, it wasn't a specific subject, it was more of everything else. Students are going to school and learning all these subjects, but they're still growing and learning as human beings. And I like that human being part. So this is actually what brought me to New York City, and I have since stayed. I went to graduate school at Columbia University. So the college within Columbia is called Teachers College. Ironically, that is just it started as Teachers College, but the name stuck. But it does do far more than just educational work. And I was part of the counseling psychology program at Columbia. So that's in becoming a counselor and becoming a therapist, all of my work started and brought me to my graduate school experience in New York.
Wow. So that's what you did. So you graduated, you got your degree, and then you moved on to a master's.
Yes. Yep. That was it. And again, I feel like as education has always been sort of life-changing experience for me, like one after the next, so too was my experience at Columbia. I met some of the most brilliant and esteemed people, not just in the country, but in the world, studying and working at Columbia. And I find even now, I'm actually again in another program, which I can speak on. I'm doing an advanced certificate, but the papers that I'm studying from in this advanced certificate program are written by my professors and my colleagues at Columbia. So being able to have that experience and work with and work under and meet the incredible educators that I did at Columbia really set the bar high for me in my education.
So you can actually sort of, if you get stuck on something, you can go to the author and get it clarified. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The first time I saw it, I was looking because no matter what program you're in, when after, in college for sure, but once you get to graduate and then postgraduate, it is just an incredible amount of reading and reading. And reading, and then you do writing, but you do just so much reading. And the first time I saw some of my professors' names, I was like, oh, I know, not only do I know who I'm reading, but the concepts that they're speaking on are concepts that we've worked on, that I got to hear from them firsthand that they developed. So really cool, really unique perspectives there.
Wow. So where does that take you?
So this long journey of education, I'll tell you. So I did get my counseling psychology degree at Columbia, and that degree specifically put me as being able to do therapeutic work in schools. So I really sort of combined that love of working in education and working with students, and that really newfound love of psychology. So I was a school counselor for several years. And then the pandemic hit, and I also had a very unexpected medical occurrence that those two things combined really shifted me around in my career and in my coursework. And though I still love working with students, those two experiences really brought me to do this advanced certificate, which the certificate that I'm working on now is a clinical mental health counseling degree. So luckily, my graduate degree has covered most of the bases in counseling. And this advanced certificate is really just a bridge from becoming one counselor to becoming another counselor. So it's actually just a year program that I just started. And what it will do is by the end, so really this time next year, I'll have a license to be able to practice with anyone, anywhere, at any time, essentially. Within the constraints of the license, meaning that it's a New York license, so I will be New York licensed. But it allows me the ability to work with adults or children, to open up a private practice if I want, to work in a hospital setting, community center setting, any type of, really any type of setting that has the ability for therapists and counselors to work in. This new degree really opens that field up for me. So right now, I'm still, I have my own practice where I do both consultations for people who might need counseling, as well as I do coaching in the emotional wellness and mental wellness space. And then eventually I will have that full license and be able to practice, hopefully open my own practice at that point.
Wow. So, you know where you're going then?
You know, I keep thinking I do, and then I pivot, and then so right now I've got the plan, all this education behind me, really pushing me forward into this one space, but we don't know when the world is going to shut down or when the next world event will happen that might change my perspective or change a world perspective. So I'm on my toes at this point, but I really like the direction that I'm going in. I really like the doors that have been opened based on everything that I've worked on.
So how did you get on with once we'd locked down then?
Yes.
How did that change what you did? Because you was obviously going into schools at this stage, and they'd kind of shut schools down, they shut everything down. So how did you go about your business doing that?
Yeah.
During that?
So at that time I was still working in schools, and everything was changed to remote work. So I was counseling students in the same way that you and I are communicating. However, as a school counselor, it's your job to assist the students who might not have yet built the muscles or skills in responsibility or accountability or any of those things. So just getting students to appear on the screen was a challenge in itself. So myself and the other counselor, as well as really the whole school team that I was working on, it was all hands on deck at all times, because our biggest problem that we were facing at the time was just getting a student to pop on screen, just getting the student to come to school, so to speak, which was open the laptop that was provided by the school and click into the link. But because they were middle schoolers, and it's natural, especially at that stage of development, to try to push against boundaries and see what comes of it,
See
and
how far you can go.
see how far. And it's so, as a counselor, I'm like, wow, this is crazy, because what they're doing, it's not like they're doing something wrong for the age that they're in. They're pushing the boundaries and the limits, and naturally that is very okay for students to do. Obviously there's consequences, and then they learn the consequences, and then they figure out if the boundary pushing made sense or not. But we had so much difficulty even being able to implement consequences, because we didn't have access. We didn't have the students in the controlled environment of the school building. So because of that, it was constant work, constant communication with family, constant trying to see what we could do to get these students to come on screen.
It's not like you could take them up the headmaster's office for 6 of the best.
Right. There was nothing.
They've done away with all that now, haven't they?
Yeah,
That was prevalent when I was at school. Didn't do me any harm.
yeah, it was tough. It was very, very tough.
So have you gone back into that environment now that they've kind of lifted a lot of the restrictions and got people back to work?
I have not. So my last, I ended for now school counseling at the end of this previous school year. So at the June of 2021 was my last time in a school, just kind of simultaneously with where I was at in my life and that medical experience that I spoke about, as well as wanting to pursue this new degree. It all really had me pivot this school year. So since September, I've really been working on building my own business and really generating a client base through that and through social networks and just building myself up in that way. So it's been a total shift because I've worked in schools for a long time at this point, but I'm excited about where my business is taking me, where my speaking career is taking me, where this new degree is taking me. So it's all part of the plan, even though the plan happens daily.
Yeah. Yeah, best laid plans of mice and men.
Yes.
You have to have a fluid plan.
That's it.
You have to down test and adjust.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Brilliant.
True.
Well, Bri, I've enjoyed that. That's been fascinating. You're really bubbly.
I have heard that before, and I take it as a compliment. I try
Oh,
to.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. I always try to bring that energy, though I know we can't all be or feel positive at all times. When I am able to, I try to bring it to others as well.
Always keep your glass half full.
That's it. Yeah. There you go.
Top tip of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Tim. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.